a couple of things I wanted to make sure I mentioned. One is, again, just thank y'all again for your commitment to be here last night and today. And also, just so impressed with you ladies. I know I think Dwayne was telling me there's like 6 ladies that are committed to do the women's Kairos, and that's just great. And you just never will know the impact you're going to have on these women. And it's always been a difficult thing, recruiting for the women's Kairos, and it just says a lot about your church. It's like that. I mean, I think you said 6. So, I mean, that is just wonderful. It's tough recruiting for the men. We would kill for 6 new people, and all of a sudden there's 6 from your church. So that's just a great thing. Again, and I can't remember if I mentioned this or not. Did I mention I was a pastor? I was bivocational. And I just praise God for Dwayne and Michelle. And, I know what it's like having a full-time job and, pastoring a church as well. And I did that for 5 years, and I wouldn't have traded a minute of it, but when it was time to stop, it was time to stop, and the Lord gave me clarity about that. But, I remember one month in particular, I had 2,400 minutes on my phone over the course of a month. It was actually 2,500, but 24 were to church members, and it was an extra week. It was 40 hours. Calling my folks in my church on the way to work, during my lunch hour, on the way home, doing hospital visits before work, during my lunch hour, on the way home. And, I thank God for you and the work that you're doing, and that's, that's really, God's really honoring that. So, just wanted to say that. The other thing, Bill is great. He just pulls things up so quick on this computer thing here, and I'm always impressed with that. I mentioned to you Weekend to Remember. Maybe that's a little better, yeah. That's the upcoming marriage enrichment seminar. Bill was able to find a short clip, and we're going to play the clip and just give you a little idea of what that's about. Keep that in mind. It's really good. Very, very professionally done. It's a couple that leads it, and it's a fun weekend. So encourage that. A couple other things that I'll follow up on. First of all, I know that several of you are here without your spouse. Either they're working or maybe just weren't at a point yet where they're ready to come, and that's okay. But I appreciate those of you that have come by yourself, because God will honor that. There's some good information you're going to have, and that's always a difficult thing when you've got one party that might be a little more motivated than another, or one that's not able to participate as much because of other commitments. But I think the information you're getting, just want to encourage you, it's applicable. And so as you do this, just encourage you to go over this with your spouse, and it may provide some opportunities for some steps to be taken to further strengthen your marriage, whether that person is here or not. So I'm glad everybody is here. Communication. We're going to talk a little bit about today, first about conflict. And that ties in with the communication component. I think that one of the things that I think we battle more than anything else are these. Okay? How many times do we go to the restaurant and you walk in and everybody's on their phones? See, now that's not too hard for me because I don't know how to do half of that stuff, But again, before, just like I said earlier, those of us that are a little older, we remember there's 3 ways to communicate. It was in person, by letter, or on the phone. Right? And so when you went out, most of those were cut out. If you went out on a date, went to a restaurant with your spouse, and y'all going out to eat, you didn't have your phone wasn't with you, you're not going to write any letters, and you were in person. So the odds were greater there's going to be some good conversation, right? But now you go out to eat, and I love my football. I'm from Tennessee, and I'm happy. I think we're moving in the right direction. But when we would go out to eat, and I'm sure y'all go through the same thing, everybody's got a TV in the restaurant. And so I purposely, like if that's the TV, I will sit underneath it, you know, so I won't be distracted. And that worked for a while, but now they're putting in more TVs, so then there's another one 10 feet away, you know. But I really try to purposely get myself with my back to the TV because I know me well enough to know I'm going to be tempted to watch the game or to, you know. And so I think that, you know, when we do those kinds of things, so obviously TV is one thing, the phone is another thing, whether you're out, going out, or you're at home. If you're talking with another and somebody's on the phone, or you're saying, yeah, honey, I hear you, you know, oh, yeah, you know, and okay, so it does not communicate value. What it communicates is what you have to say really isn't that important. This is more important. Right? And so, the best example, I remember when I was growing up, my father loved Daddy always loved reading the newspaper. And I remember I was talking to him about something, and he was reading the paper, and it was, you know, and he was, yes, son, that's right, yeah, I hear you. Mm-hmm. And then I said, and then I got it, I understood what I said, and then the Martians came, and they abducted me, and they took me to Mars. Okay, that's too bad, son. And my father is the calmest man in the world, but he got really mad when I went up and I flipped the paper. It scared him to death. And my daddy chased me around that dining room table. But, you know, I think that, you know, I think we've got to look at when we have conversations, what is our competition? What is our competition? And do something about the competition. If it's the TV, turn off the TV. Right? If it's the phone, put the phone on vibrate or just leave it off, ideally. I can't tell you, when I do marriage counseling, you know, 80% of the time, the phone starts ringing in the session. Now, I'll grant them one call. If it's more than one, I say, excuse me, turn it off. What? Turn it off. You know, this is mirroring what's going on at home. We're not going to recreate that. You know, turn the phone off. And you need to give your spouse undivided attention, right? And so that speaks volumes. It says what you have to say is important to me. It is of value. I want to listen. I want to be attentive, right? So look at what that weakness is for you. If it's the TV or the phone, or if it's, you know, the kids running in and out and playing. Okay, that's not the best time to maybe have a deep conversation. So you wait until later when the kids are down. Okay? But pick your time, but recognize what your weakness is and adjust it accordingly. Because, you know, it places value on the speaker and lets them know that's important. Right? So as we move into conflict, all right, and talking about conflict, that's so important as well. When I mention the word conflict, tell me what's the first word that comes to your mind? Fight. Okay? Argument. Right? What else?
Hate, disagreement.
Hate, disagreement. Okay. Here's something I'm not hearing. That's what I hope is going to come out of this. Growth. Growth. A verse in the book of James, James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it all joy, my brothers, whenever you go through various trials and tribulations, because it can strengthen your character. And when you're strong in character, you'll be ready for anything. Right? When there's conflict, yes, what shapes our view of conflict, that first word or that feeling that comes to mind when we hear conflict, often what shapes that is our frame of reference. Right? If we grew up with conflict, then it's a negative thing. If we grew up with yelling or screaming or, unfortunately, if there's hitting or pushing, conflict's a very scary thing because your frame of reference is this is not going to end well because I remember what I saw growing up. Right? Okay? So then we have very differing views of how to deal with it. Sometimes the greatest thing we want to do is avoid it at all costs. And so we stuff it. Right? I call it the if, then, therefore principle. If I bring this up, then he or she is going to react in this way. Therefore, it's not worth it. right? If then, therefore. So you've already been judge and jury to that thought. You've already decided, and so it dies on the vine. It doesn't go anywhere. And so what happens then, if we tend to hold things in, what's going to happen? Build up, that's right. And you're going to explode, right? It can be bitterness, hostility, and resentment, right? We go back, remember the intimacies we're talking about? Physical, emotional, and spiritual. So if that tension is there, last thing you want to do is be intimate with that person, right? In a physical way, because you don't trust them, you don't feel safe with them. There's tension there, okay? And so it begins to build. So what happens though, again, we look at that verse, consider it all joy when you go through trials and tribulations because it can strengthen your character. So conflict is an opportunity for growth. What I tell clients when they come to us is, I know it's a difficult thing that you're here, and it's kind of like a car wreck. There's never a good time for that, but God can use this for His glory and His good. So the conflict or the crisis that brought you in is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to address some issues that you've known maybe all along you need to deal with, but you were afraid to, or you didn't know how to, or maybe, doggone it, you just rebellious and I didn't want to, Or maybe you didn't know it was there. Just the crisis brought some things to the surface that it's just time to be dealt with, okay? So, again, crisis doesn't have to be good or bad. Right? When I went to graduate school, I paid a lot of money for each letter. I don't remember much that I got out of it, but here's something I got out of it. I remember this. The word crisis is it's Greek for out of balance. Right? The word crisis is Greek for out of balance. In the analogy that I remember they gave us, it's like being on a tightrope, okay? And you're wavering, right? So you're out of balance. So the crisis in and of itself is neither good nor bad. But if you fall in this direction, and let's just say in this direction is a healthy church, good friends that can love you and hold you accountable, but also lovingly challenge you and to walk with you through that crisis, then that crisis can be a good thing. If you fall this way and you turn towards alcohol, drugs, pornography, or you withdraw, or you work longer hours, you escape into something else or someone else, okay, then obviously the crisis is a bad thing. So the crisis in and of itself, y'all, is neither good nor bad. It's what we do with it, okay? So crisis can be an opportunity for growth. But again, our frame of reference and what we grew up with, that shapes our view of crisis. So I was one of 5 kids. I had 3 older sisters and a younger brother. My brother and I fought all the time, about every day. You go to our house we grew up in, there's some holes in the door where that rascal would run and hide in the bathroom, and I kicked a hole in the door trying to get to him. And there's a hole in the door, where that happened. And we would fight. I mean, it was brother fight. It was never to the face kind of stuff. But, his weapon against me, he tickled me, and I had to get off of it. But that was his ace in the hole. He'd just reach his hand up enough to start doing this. But arguing or fighting among the kids was not that unusual. My mom and dad didn't. We were very blessed, very good married. My mom and daddy died 3 years ago at age 90. I almost reached 65 years of marriage. Yeah, so it was a great, but arguing, among his siblings was not that big of a deal. Whereas my wife, she had one older sister, she was 5 years older, and there was no arguing in her home. There was no conflict. Her father was an engineer. This was old school. Her mother now is 94, going on about 70. I mean, this is an amazing woman. But it was a very traditional home. Dinner was on the table. He was a mechanical engineer. Dinner was on the table, 5:30 every day. They talked. They were very civil. There was never, she made all A's and B's all through high school, college, graduate school. She made 1 C. But she remembers it like it was yesterday. She was in the 8th grade. And he was an engineer. Guess what it was? Math. And he got mad at her. And she still remembers that to this day. How, she just couldn't measure up. And so there, I remember when they would come visit, they would say, "Oh, I see you painting the house." Yeah. That was it. I mean, know if they liked the color, or if they didn't like the color, or your kids sure are active. Okay. And you never knew where you stood. Now, my parents had their issues too. I'm not, no parents are perfect. We do the best we can. My point being, she grew up in an environment where you never quite knew where you stood with things. Statements were made, but you didn't know what it meant. Right? So, fast forward to now, we're married. And one Saturday morning, we're having breakfast, and she made some toast in our toaster oven, as everybody used to get back in those days. Everybody got a toaster oven as a wedding gift, So we're talking, and she's right, the toaster oven is behind her. And we have our coffee, and we're just talking, and the smoke's coming out of the toaster oven. And I could see it, she couldn't. I said, "Honey, the toast is burning." And she said, "Well, you don't think I can do anything right, do you?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I said, what did you think I meant by that? She said, you're saying I can't even make toast. Right? Again, you think about the environment she grew up in, that was a consistent statement. Okay? A statement is made and it's never clarified. You don't know where you stand. And so thankfully the therapist in me kicked in. It's like, no. All I'm saying is I could see it. You could. You make great toast. You make the best toast in the whole world. I said, I just saw smoke. And so, but the frame of reference. Does that make sense? So her frame of reference. So I had to learn her language. And so whenever I would, we had any comments about the kids, because I was more the stern one, and she was a little more easygoing with the kids, and discipline came a little easier for me to do with the kids. And so if I was going to say something, I said, "All right, now you're the best parent in the whole world, right?" Yeah, okay. So here, and we kind of laugh about it, but it set the tone where we could have those conversations, right? So again, my point being that our frame of reference shapes our view of conflict. But what's important with conflict is to realize it's an opportunity for growth. It's how we approach it. Okay? So, it's perception versus reality. And that's a concept that I just showed you. All right, her perception was I was being critical of her ability to make toast. So when I asked, okay, what did you hear me just say? What do you think I meant by that? She gave me her perception. Right? And then I reframed it, and I said, "No, the toaster's burning, that's all I'm saying. You make great toast." Right? So the reality was, that I gave her the reality. Right? So sometimes if you say something to your spouse, and their reaction doesn't match what you just said, and there's a part of this thing, wait a minute, where's that coming from? It's okay to say, and that's a good little trick to use sometimes, it's like, what did you think I meant by that? What did you hear me say? Okay, now you're getting their perception of what you said, right? And you can either say, yes, that's what I meant, or, no, I'm sorry it came across that way. What I'm trying to say is, and you reframe it. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, we all do that, all right? We all do it. So it's perception versus reality, okay? Now, again, the other thing with conflict is you attack the problem, not the person. John 10:10 again says, "The thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy, but I came so that you might have life and might have it abundantly." Right? So we don't want to give the evil one a foothold when there's conflict. If we stuff it, if we sweep it under the carpet, if we internalize it, okay? Many times people that have strayed away from the marriage either with an emotional affair or a physical affair or struggling with pornography or losing themselves in some other way is because they have felt unloved, unwanted, but they've been fearful of bringing it up because they never felt they were listened to, or they never felt they were heard, or they were afraid of how their spouse was going to react, or they would go into the if, then, therefore. Every time I've done this before, this is how it plays out, so what's the point? And then unfortunately it leads to some poor choices. Okay? So it's very, very important that you look at conflict, as something that can be productive. The first argument my wife and I had, I'm thinking, that was a good one. That was pretty good. We were able to bring some things out. It got a little tense, but we it was good. We worked through some stuff. You know, and she would tell you, I thought the marriage was over. You know, I mean, she really did. She said, I mean, because again, the home she grew up in, there was no argument, there was no conflict. So the home I grew up in, you know, there was a lot of arguing between the kids. So again, frame of reference. So I had to give her permission to help her see it's okay to say how you feel. You know, I'm not going anywhere. You know, I love you, and I'm committed, and you know, but it's okay to say how you're really feeling. And that took some time to learn how to do that. Okay. So conflict is very important. You're going to have it, and it is no way a reflection of having a poor marriage if you work through it. All right. But if you don't, then you're giving the evil one a foothold in your relationship. And then the whispers start. Remember we talked about that yesterday. Satan whispered in the enemy's ear. Right? Okay. So, what I'm going to have you do, here's what I want you to do as you look at this. Now, again, I think it's important to look at. Now, conflict is so important. What it's going to reveal, you know, there may be certain things as you think about this and as you talk with your spouse about it that may come to the surface. Right? Because again, sometimes it clarifies. It's like, oh wow, so that's where that comes from. There's an old saying, you don't need to kill an ant with a sledgehammer. Right? And so sometimes if you say something and the reaction is so great, you know, it doesn't match the event. An important question to ask yourself sometimes is, where does that come from? Is it just about this? Again, often what I see in marriages is if a spouse does something and it doesn't seem to be that huge of a deal, but it is like an overkill on the reaction, often it ties in to the past. Well, that's what my ex used to do. Or that's what my parents used to do. And so we're bringing those feelings into that current relationship, if that makes sense. Okay? So,
I thought you said we moved to
So here's what I want you to do. I want you to, you know, it's just a couple of questions on here. But one thing I want you to add to that is, and this is important, what is one thing that we need to deal with as a couple? It may be a source of stress. All right? Now, obviously, you're not going to resolve that. You might, but the goal isn't to resolve it in your 15, 20 minutes alone, but to identify what that is. Okay? And try to talk about it. Now, you may, and the goal is to agree, okay, this is something we need to spend more time on. Conflict, what it also brings out is there may be certain things that have been there for a long time, and that's where, you know, going to counseling, you know, can be beneficial. Doesn't have to be me, it can be your pastor, all right? But sometimes, or going to someone that you trust, but it may reveal some things that are deeper than you can handle on your own. I've got books up here, and there's a lot of good stuff out there that would be beneficial, and that might, you know, that may be all that you need. But if you find yourself getting stuck again, be open to the idea of seeking some sort of Christian counseling or talking to your pastor or somebody that is really gifted in that area, okay? So again, so pick an area, you know, talk about one area of conflict. So I want you to just fill this out and then go to your space